It's Ricky Heller here from rickyheller.com. I help people on restricted diets learn how to cook, eat, and love their food again so they can stick with it without feeling deprived and just get on with living their best lives. So as we're heading into the holiday season, that's when I'm filming this video now, I've had a lot of questions from clients and people in my programs like the Candida Kickstart asking me, how bad is it really if I cheat a little bit over the holidays? And I actually think that's the wrong question, but I will get to that later in the video. But I think I'd like to look at a little bit in terms of the effects of cheating, but also why is it that there are some people who can so-called cheat or maybe veer off the diet a little bit during the holidays or a period like that, and everything seems to then revert back to normal. They just get right back on the wagon afterwards. And then there are other people like me who, if they veer off their anti-candida program even just a little bit, it's a disaster, like it was for me in 2008, where I just immediately went back to my old habits, eating sugar, overeating sugar, and it made my symptoms 50 times worse. So I think what we need to look at, there are basically two factors. One is what is causing the candida in the first place, and the other is how long does it take to heal. So let's go to the causes. And there are basically two main causes for someone to come down with an overgrowth of candida. And I'm going to call them external and internal, very technical terms. So I made these up. But when I look at people who have candida overgrowth, generally it seems to be caused by one of these two factors. So this is what I mean by those. When I say external factors, I mean something outside of yourself that was imposed upon you, perhaps not even voluntarily, that upset the equilibrium or the balance in your inner ecosystem, in your intestinal tract. So it upset the balance of the organisms in there and allowed the candida to grow out of control, resulting in candida-related complex or candida, whatever you want to call it. So I'm thinking about things like if you have an infection, you have to take antibiotics, or someone is on the birth control pill, or perhaps you have an extremely stressful period in your life. So this might be somebody who up until that time was perfectly healthy, perfectly normal eater. So not someone who overate or had cravings, or, I think of my husband who's just like this perfectly normal eater. He loves to have a well-balanced meal of a protein and a vegetable and a starch. And then he might or might not have a dessert, but he never overeats. He's just slim and healthy, normal, not me. So somebody like that, though, could still end up with candida because something causes an imbalance. And then they have this sort of sudden onset of candida. They might be diagnosed. They might figure it out themselves. They treat the candida and they end up being okay. Then there are what I call the internal sources of candida. And by that, I mean more something that's generated from the person themselves. So like in my case, it's not that I didn't ever take antibiotics. I was on the birth control pill. I had basically all of those other factors as well. But I also was someone who loved sweets from the time I was a little kid. I grew up in a house where we were baking when from 6 years and up. And I overate and abused sugar for my whole life, basically. So what that did was it was a slow decline. I'm assuming I started out as a pretty healthy person. I don't remember having a lot of health issues as a kid, but as I got older and I continued with this behavior and I kept feeding the sugar and feeding the candida, that just exacerbated the problem. That just made the candida that much worse, and it came on that much stronger. And looking back, people like me who have this sort of internal compulsion to eat sugar or carbs or anything else that might feed the candida, like junk food or very processed foods, that kind of lifestyle will encourage candida to grow out of control. And you might notice that over the years, things got worse and worse and worse. So the two causes tend to affect the time it takes to heal. And for someone like me, the idea of moderation when it comes to sweets is basically an impossibility. I'll just say it. So I remember very well when I first started teaching at the college that I used to teach at. I had a roommate who was beautiful. She was model-like. In fact, I think she did some modeling in her younger years. 6 feet tall, gorgeous, and we were talking about our love of chocolate one day, and she said, "Oh yeah, I found that the way that I don't overeat chocolate is I'll just go out to like a really expensive chocolatier store like Godiva chocolates or something like that, and I'll just buy one really good quality chocolate truffle, and then I'll just savor it and I'll eat it, and that's enough for me." And I remember thinking, is this woman like effing crazy? Like, there is no way I could eat one chocolate truffle. I could go buy a box of holiday truffles and eat the whole thing myself. So that's the difference. If you're someone who has grown up overeating, and maybe like me, you were dealing with binge eating, lots of sweets, that's not going to be an option. So I think that's part of what is at play here. The people who were basically normal eaters to begin with, once their candida is under control, they can go back to just a moderate amount of sweets or treats over the holidays, and then they revert right back to their normal eating habits, and everything stays smooth and even. If you're like me, that's not going to happen. The other factor to look at, as I said, is the time it takes to heal. So there's a principle in holistic healing called Herring's Law of Cure. And basically it looks at the different factors that you have to consider when how someone is healed over time. So it says things like healing happens from the top down and so on. But the one factor that I always found really fascinating, particularly where candida is concerned, is we heal in the opposite order of the way our symptoms appeared. So for instance, if you're somebody dealing with candida, and let's say you started off with I'm gonna use my own symptom. Let's say you started off with sinus infections one year, then the next year it got worse and you had oral thrush, and then the third year you ended up with athlete's foot. As you heal, those things are going to disappear in reverse order. So the first thing to go is going to be the athlete's foot, the second thing to go will be the oral thrush, and the last thing to go will be the sinus infections. And that's what Herring's Law of Cure says happens. So if you're someone who's been dealing with candida for a really long time, Herring's Law of Cure would suggest it's going to take a long time for those things to work their way out in reverse order. If you're someone who had an external reason for this imbalance that caused the candida overgrowth, and let's say it only existed in your body for maybe 6 months, then Herring's Law of Cure will say that you will be able to reverse that and go back to the previous state that you were in much faster than someone who's been dealing with it for a long time, which just makes sense. So the longer you've been dealing with candida, the more the candida is entrenched in your intestinal tract and perhaps other areas of your body. And don't forget that the external symptoms can disappear before the internal candida is totally gone. So you may no longer have rashes, you may no longer have hair issues, and you may no longer have athlete's foot, but that doesn't mean there isn't candida still in your intestinal tract in an overgrowth state. And so if at that point you go and cheat over the holidays and start eating things with sugar and alcohol, that candida can be triggered very easily to grow out of control. Again, so if I use myself as an example, that's why even at this point, I have been following an anti-candida protocol on one level or another. I call it an anti-candida lifestyle because now I'm not on the strict diet anymore, but it's just the way I live, for like 18 years. And I still will not even attempt to eat something with sugar in it because I know I'm not 100% clear of candida, and that candida can be fed by that sugar and will just take over my body. So those are the two factors you need to think about if you're considering eating something that isn't candida diet friendly over the holidays. For me, I think the last thing to think about in terms of whether or not it's a good idea is the fact that you can still indulge and have delicious foods without going off program. So, that's why I created programs like my Candida Kickstart or the Sweet Life Club, where there are new recipes every month, because I wanted people to have delicious, fantastic food that they could have at the holidays, share with their families, and not feel like they were eating something that was restricted or diet food, and enjoy themselves. And so that's been my approach for the last 18 years. We have people over to our house, I serve them my recipes, and everybody loves them. So if you can work something like that out, find some great recipes that are going to help you over the holidays to get through them, and I have loads on my blog, you can check the links below, then that's a way for you to avoid that question altogether. But if this is still something that's nagging at the back of your brain and you're thinking, maybe just a little bit, maybe I can just go off program for just a little, those few days and nothing will come of it, and you're still considering that, I would ask you to think about two different questions. The first one is, how great will you feel about yourself and physically when you ring in 2018 if you got through the holidays without cheating on your Candida diet? How great will that feel? And your body will feel so great. So think about that question. And then the other question is, that I would say, is maybe not so much should I cheat, but why would you want to cheat in the first place? Because that's doing something that you know is not helping your body to heal. So that's just a question for people to consider. So I hope this video was helpful today, and I hope it sets you on the right path to get through this holiday season. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and more importantly, if you know anybody that you think could benefit from this information, please share the video with them. Okay, everybody, I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time. Bye.